Hey everyone, welcome back to the Magnanimous Collective. I'm your host, Sean Kubota. Let's start it off with a deep breath into the belly. And let it go. Oh yeah, dropped in. Today I have a very special guest. The first female woman to grace the channel. Lucero Semperio, aka Lucy, one of my good friends from our dance community. She is an entrepreneur. She is a fitness and dance instructor and coach. She's an overall aspirational, very motivational and optimistic human being who just radiates positivity as well as personal accountability, which is why, I wanted to have her on. So I'm really grateful for you to be here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm super excited to hear more of your story. We know each other in passing and on the dance floor, and that's one way of communicating that's super powerful in itself. Mm-hmm. And yet, you've been following Magnanimous Collective since the beginning, and been shouting us out and saying some responses and reflections, which has really meant a lot to me. So thank you. And also it shows me, where you're at too, because in this world of cancel culture and in this world of everyone being disempowered and victimizing themselves because it's popular. I don't like to necessarily just put myself in the midst of uncomfortable or awkward situations when I can, be fulfilled through having more enriching conversation and learning something as well from otherwise individuals like yourself. So I'm excited to hear more about your story. So, pretty much everyone on here has had, and I think all people have moments of adversity and challenge and tragedy. And everyone always has the choice in those moments. And a lot of times we usually have to have multitudes of opportunities arise where potentially we do choose the misery story, the victim trajectory, until we finally are like, you know what, enough. I'm going to choose to own this, even as far back as I have to. I'm going to choose to own that I had a creation in this so that I can be free of the shackles of feeling disempowered of it, and then move forward in a more strengthened and empowered way, right? So tell the viewers, like, what were some of those moments for you that made Lucy into who I'm sitting in front of today?
Oof. Okay, so I'm first generation here. My family is from Mexico, and I feel like that was like a loaded question. Okay, so actually when I was 23, I'm 32 now. I was 23. I was at the bottom. Like I was at rock bottom. Alcoholic, drug addict, almost homeless. And I lost my parents. My whole family had lost faith in me.
Oh, wow.
Like I almost lost my family. And that's why at age 23, I said no more. I had to literally like get whatever strength I had to just pick myself up, because I did not know what was wrong with me. I just knew I was so unhappy. I was so unhappy. I was just like, I wanted something different, yet I was still making the same choices of drinking every weekend and sometimes hiding from my parents and just drinking every day and then hiding the bottles anywhere I could, in a corner, hide it, and like that was my life. That was my life. And at one point, I remember at 23, my dad picked me up from a party that was like 2 blocks away from my home. And they somehow found out I was there. They were so tired of my crap. My dad was tired of saying nothing and actually saying too much, to the point where he got resigned. But something got him into his car to drive to that party and to drag me out of that party. And I remember I was so drunk, I could see my dad, and it was like this, like, oh shit, my dad's here. And it's like so drunk. And I just remember my dad never laid a hand on me before that day. He got his hand. I just remember seeing that hand slap the crap out of me. Shit. And I fell on the floor.
Oh shit. Yeah.
And I think that was like the moment I was just like, whoa, and what is happening? And I think that's the moment I told myself, like, I can't keep doing this. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So I think I had to go through so many seminars, counseling, everything to figure out what the hell was going on. Because I remember at age 7, so it brought me back to at age 7. My family was my house was the home where all my family members from Mexico, when they would like cross the border, they would come to my house because we would be lending them like a room.
Right.
For like the first week or first couple of months. So there was always people coming in and out of my house. And it was me and my sister, mom and dad, and then whoever family member, relative would come.
Right.
So I just remember seeing a lot of family, and they would come and go. And then at age 7, my uncle showed up, and he was molesting me.
Oh, shit.
For quite a while. And I said nothing because I knew if I said something that would break my family apart. It was from my mom's side. So, and my mom hardly had any family here. It would always be my dad's family. So I knew if I spoke up, my mom would have no family here. And so I created a story of like, first, I can't trust men. Second, I'm a bad person. Because if I was a good person, I would. This wouldn't have happened to me,
right? Yeah.
And so I stayed quiet from the age of 7, and then he was staying at my house till I was 15. Jeez. And I just remember one time I was in high school, and we had an assignment, and I forgot exactly what the assignment was, but it said to write a story. And I was just like, I was already fed up. And at this time, I'm a teenager. I'm an angry teenager.
Right.
Right.
Weren't we all?
I'm an angry teenager. And at that time, I was bullied in middle school for being quiet. And so I decided, once I get to high school, I'm not going to be that same person. Because I went to a high school that was totally like different. I had it. We had moved, so I had a chance to really like create myself. And I was like, I'm not going to be that timid little shy girl that doesn't say anything. So I'm going to be a bitch.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna be the complete opposite. Yeah. I'll be the complete opposite. So I was angry, and people knew not to mess with me because I knew like if you mess with me, I will show you. I will show you. Yeah. And so I just remember going through that assignment, and I'm always angry. People knew me as the girl that was outspoken. Like I said everything in my mind.
Well, because you were holding all that in too, right? I mean, geez.
Yeah. So I remember we had the assignment, and I just thinking like, I'm just going to write whatever comes up. And I did not know what I was writing, but I just remember writing something like really sad. And the teacher did not say anything to me as I turned it in, and she checked it and everything. I just remember a week later, the counselor told me like, hey, like, I kind of need you to come in. And I was like, oh shit, what did I do? I didn't do anything. I promise I didn't do anything. So I came in, and my parents are in the counseling room, and I was like, what is going on? Like, he's like, oh, you wrote this story, and it's just too descriptive. Like, it's sad. And it's too descriptive, and it's kind of like, we're kind of worried about you. And I was just like, well, no, there's nothing wrong. Like, you told me to write a story, and this is what I did. He's like, I don't know. It's just, there's something off about this story. I actually don't even remember what I wrote, but I just remember being in a state of sadness. Whoa. Yeah. And so my parents are there, and he's like, is there something you need to tell us? And I felt cornered. Because first, I didn't even know what was going on. I just remember I was just always angry. And I told him, no, I'm always like, I'm okay. I'm okay. And so my parents came, and it's like, I think there's something going on in the house. And I don't think you're telling us. And that's when all of a sudden, like, all these images of things that were happening, like, I had blocked off. Right. Like, it came off, and it didn't even know it was there.
Well, yeah, you had like compartmentalized it so far back that it wasn't. Wow.
So, and I started bawling. And I just remember that felt like that counseling session was so long, but it could have been maybe minutes, you know? Right. And my dad got so angry of everything that was coming up, and angry at my uncle. Yeah. And I never seen that anger in my dad's eyes.
Oh, yeah, kill him.
Never. Yeah. Like, there was like, I'm going to kill
Straight
this
up.
guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill him. And that guy was still living at our home.
Oh, no way.
And I remember the counselor holding him back, my mom holding him back. And there's like, if you do something right now, if you step out of that room, you're going to end up in jail.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, prison.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you can see it in his eyes. And I'm just crying. And I'm like, crap, I did this to my family. I'm such a bad person. I'm such a bad person. And fast forward just a little bit. I like, when all that happened, I was going to counseling sessions, and I was just going through like the feelings, but there was still some anger.
Right.
So at the age of 23, I was already better, but I was drinking. I was doing drugs. I kind of knew what was going on. I mean, I had just kind of like graced like the top, because I wasn't willing to really look deep into like what the hell was going on and what was causing everything. Like, I was just like, oh, like, I just shared that my uncle was doing something to me and I'm a bad person, and my family split because of me. And there was all these things that were already there. Yeah. So at age 23, my sister told me, and my dad had already slapped me. Right. Yeah. I was already about to lose my family and be homeless. And my sister went to the seminar, and she's like, hey, I think the seminar would help you, will help you a lot. And I was like, I'm not doing a seminar. I'm sorry. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to, I don't want to do that. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. And she's like, well, maybe it's something for you to look at. I'm not saying there's something wrong with you. I just think something for you to look at. And I remember she insisted so much, she started crying. And I was like, okay, I'll go check it out. I'll go look. So I go, and she, like, they do like a presentation. And then she's like, I think you should sign up. I think you should sign up. And I was like, no, I don't even have the funds for it. I mean, I kind of did, but I would use that money for, obviously, alcohol. To drink.
Yeah. Which is expensive.
Yes, it's an expensive habit.
It is.
And so I just remember, like, she said, like, I'll pay for it. It was like $700.
This is your older sister or younger sister?
This is my older sister.
Cool.
Yeah, she...
Big ups to older sister.
Yeah. And so... And she's like, I'll pay for it. And I was like, no, I don't want you to spend money on me. Don't even do that. She's like, I'll pay for it. So she paid for it. And I remember going to that. It was a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was a room full of people. And there's a speaker in the front. And the person seems way too nice. And I was like, feels so weird. I don't want to be here. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with all these people, but there's nothing wrong with me. What am I doing here? And so... I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay here. I told my sister I was going to be here, so I'm just going to be here. And then the people started sharing about their stories and what the hell what is it that they're going through? And I was like, wow, these people have real big problems. Like, oh, crap. And then I remember the speaker saying something about forgiveness. Yeah. And I was just, it just sat with me. I was like, I remember walking out of the day, it was day 2, Saturday, and it was like forgiveness. And I all these years that have been happening, and I never forgave myself for putting myself through so much anger, sadness, and like not taking care of like that inner child that I just decided to neglect. And I decided at that moment to just forgive myself. Forgive myself for doing that to myself all those years. And then, like, once I really got, like, wow, I love myself. I love me. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for doing that. That it opened up a space for me to even forgive my uncle. I remember calling him. I decided to take, like, I was like, I'm free from that. But if he did that to me, there's something wrong with him. Something happened to him.
Right.
I want him to be free too. So I called him. And I told myself, the result doesn't matter. But I want him to know that I forgive him, because I don't know if that's still in his space, in his head, in his in his history, but I want him to know that I forgive him. And I called him. And I told him, it's like, hey, remember me? Remember we at 7 years old, you started doing these things to me, and he neglected everything.
He denied it?
He denied it. He's like, I think you're confusing me with somebody else. I didn't do that to you. But it didn't matter to me what he said. Because I was already at peace, and I told myself, well, I just want him to know. And I told him, it's like, hey, and if you ever need anybody to talk to, I'm right here.
Wow.
And he did call me once, and it was like months later, and he just told me, he was very unhappy. Because he had had several failed marriages. He had a little girl that wanted nothing to do with him. A child that he said, I don't think she's proud of me. And I'm drinking all the time, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And I told him, there's the seminar that is the reason why I called you. This seminar helped me. I just want you to come and see it. You don't have to, but it's an invitation. And I saw him like weeks later. And this is the first time I had seen him after I had forgiven him. And I remember before, I used to see him with some eyes of like so much like hatred. And I didn't even know it was like capable of those feelings, but it was there.
Yeah.
There was like a big wall as well. So that was the first time I saw him, and I just saw him with eyes of compassion. And he didn't want to do the course, but he at least saw that there was something out there.
Yeah. Which
is what I wanted. And every now and then we do talk. He's not somebody that I give him, obviously share everything with, but at least sometimes I am the space for him to be like, hey, like, I'm alive, I'm okay. Because I don't think he has anybody. And from what I know, my family doesn't talk to him anymore, but from what I know, from family, talking to family members, they say that he's alone and he's by himself. And so I feel like sometimes when he reaches out, it's because he just needs somebody. And I'm okay with being that somebody, even though no matter what happened, I'm okay with being that space for somebody.
Wow. This is such a mic drop. I'm like speechless, and yet there's so much to say. You've heard the first podcast that we did. You've heard the definition of magnanimous. Literally, to be forgiving and generous to that of a rival or an enemy, which is literally what you've done. Like, I have like goosebumps. Because, for one, let's just take a deep breath into that. It's the earliest deep breath we've ever had in a podcast so far. Like, it's the earliest that we've just been like, oh my goodness, wow. Thank you so much for sharing. What the? Okay. Wow. Yeah, the Spirit was asking me to ask you to come on, and I'm so glad that this is happening, because not only are you representing for all the women around the world, but you're representing for people. You're representing for humanity right now. What you've done in choosing to overcome this yourself, but also choosing to be not only forgiving, like forgiving is one thing, coming to the space of finding gratitude in what's happened to you and owning that story, and then to be generous to the individual is something that people seldom, if not ever, do. Yeah. And that's the whole point of this, because if that's where we actually are able to grow from the tragedy that's befallen us. That's how we're actually able to move on from it. It's not like I've moved past it and, I've stuffed it down. No, it's I've transformed it. Yeah. I've alchemized it into strength and into beauty. Like, it's remarkable. Your story is an incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and I love that you said that, and you had the awareness. And sometimes I think most people do. Most people know that this individual who does bad things, is hurting. Yeah. And yet it's so easy for us to get caught up in you did this, you did that, blah, blah, blah. And that also is what feeds the victimhood culture too. It's like, you did this to me. This happened to me. It's like, yeah, something happened to them too. And that doesn't justify their actions, but it does give a causal factor to it, to the point where we do have room for compassion, right? And and to turn a blind eye to it is actually ignorance, because to be ignorant, you have to ignore something. It's not oblivion and we don't know what's happening. We do know that this person's hurting, causing them to act out of normal means, right? Mm-hmm. And so to be like, you know what, fuck them, spite them, smite them, whatever, have held to them. It's like, okay, so that's the solution, right? Yeah. That's going to make that person choose to do good going forward, right? No, obviously not. And so it behooves us. It's very obviously like the better decision for us to be like, hey, for one, not only is it the better decision, but what a legendary decision to choose to be like, hey, uncle, I'm choosing to own my story right now. I forgive you. And I'm also here for you. I've chosen to literally, go into the chrysalis and liquefy and transform into the butterfly. I'm a completely new individual now. And I know my strength. I'm not vulnerable here anymore. I'm not vulnerable to you. Not only am I so vulnerable, I recognize it through everything that you've put me through. That I've been able to become strengthened from it, by it, become more relative to the suffering of humanity, become more of a whole human being. And from that, transform into this individual who can actually hold space for you, the one who did harm to me. Mm-hmm. Like, holy shit. And so such deep bows to you for being who you are. And it makes so much sense why, we were on the dance floor and it's like, hey, okay, there's only so many of us on the dance floor who are hyping people up and just loving life. And I'm like, that doesn't come from nowhere.
No, it doesn't. Which is why I had to tell you. He's like, I saw you last night at Marcus Wyatt.
Exactly. It was. That's where it began. We were all at Marcus Wyatt at Venice Gets Deep. Shout out Marcus. Yes, and Sarah. And yeah, and then from there it was Ecstatic Dance LA. Shout out to Robin and Natasha. And yeah, and remember when we were at another one of the ecstatic dances, Harmon, my brother with the big afro.
Yes, he's been on here.
And you heard his story.
Yes.
You see what I mean? The types of people who went through some shit.
Have the most beautiful energy. It's like you can't even, there's no words to it. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, but what I will say, to be fair, so many people go through super gnarly shit. And yet what they choose to do with it is always what ends up, being the result of who they choose to be or who they're showing up as, right? There are tons of people who have been in positions like yours or mine or Harmon's or whoever else's who choose to do otherwise with it, right? Mm-hmm. And then show up differently. So ultimately, I feel like at the end of the day, everyone is going to be faced with adversity and challenge. Everyone is going to have their own individual story and opportunities in those moments to choose to have this type of metamorphosis like you had. Mm-hmm. What I will say is yours really touched me and I'm thrown back by it in the sense that you had such a direct correlation with the individual who caused you harm, which is literally the pure definition of magnanimous. Because some people, they'll have something happen, they'll be like, okay, you know what, I want to be of service to others in this position or blah, blah, blah. But it's always that one person who did the thing to me, I can't touch that. I can't even, that's the line. And all respect to that. But how commendable of courage and bravery you chose to have. Not had, like, oh, I'm just a brave, courageous. No, you chose. Courage and bravery are chosen, right? Mm-hmm. They are intentional acts of facing and confronting fear.
And you chose those when you went to not only
call to forgive your uncle, but to actually be like, hey, I'm open to continue having this relationship be open and potentially rebuilt, or like maybe not even that intention, but just like, hey, I'm here to show up for you if you need that, because I recognize that you wouldn't have done that. Like, once again, floored. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything that you have else to say about your experience? I know I have been saying a lot.
I mean, I think that was the beginning of a lot of my new life.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was the beginning. It was I started you know how I said it made me subconsciously not like be afraid of men. And like
so there's that too.
So yeah. And obviously there's layers. It's like an onion, right? So totally. There's layers, and that was my first layer, because it's like, but it was like the biggest one. Yeah. But it opened up the space for me to see other things. And then I just remember after that, I was like, the reason why none of my relationships with men ever lasted is because I was the toxica, you know, I was the toxic one. Right, it was me. But then not only that, you pull people that are in the same level. Mm-hmm. So obviously I was only getting the men that were like, you know, not that great of men, because I wasn't great.
Right. Matching the frequency. That. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so but you know what? I just decided, like, I'm going to take ownership of all my past relationships in 100%.
Yeah.
And the reason why they went south is because of me.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's several people that I dated that were actually really amazing people. And when the relationship ended, like, I messed them up so much, because I was still having, like, I'm going to have revenge on all men. Right. Like, if I can't be happy, especially men, they're not going to be happy.
And hurt them before they hurt you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would be, I would do that. Yep. I would do that. And so in that same seminar, I just, doing those courses, because there was so many. And I just, one of them was taking ownership of anything that's in your space about, like, anything that's, how do you say it? Not incomplete, but anything that you need to resolve for yourself, you need to get that resolved. So whatever that is, you have to resolve it. And so I just when that was given as, like, quote unquote homework to take on, I just remember thinking, like, I need to apologize to all my exes for being such a bad girlfriend for them. Mm-hmm. So I called them up one by one, and most of them were so gracious about it. They're like, oh, that was a long time ago. Don't even worry about it. Like, most of them were so great, and most of them were like, why are you calling me? But there was still nothing, like, really negative. There's probably one that's, till this day, he doesn't like me. But you know what? I'm okay with that, because that's part of the impact of something that I created.
Totally, yeah.
And until this day, every now and then he messages me something sour and bitter, and I'm like, okay, I get it. You're still mad.
What did you do? Damn.
Yeah.
This dude's fucked up. I'm just kidding. Not really, but yeah.
So I apologized to them all, and the reason why I decided to take that on is because I knew I wanted something real, and I couldn't do that while having all this, like, baggage on me.
Yeah.
And so I just remember, like, just apologizing, and I was just like, so whoever comes is, at least he has a clean slate. And because the next person, he may not be the one, but at least he knows that I'm giving 100%. And so a guy came into my life, and it was just like, oh, he came in the perfect time. Okay. And I'm not talking about Ryan. I'm not talking about my husband. He came in the perfect time because he showed me patience. So he came in, blew me off my feet, like totally somebody I would never date, but he was so good with his words. He was charming. And at the time I had already talked to all my exes, and I was just like, it's a clean slate. And this man ended up being married, and I had no idea.
While you were dating him?
While I was dating him. I had no idea.
Holy shit.
So it was a crazy story, right? So we're at the store, and I'm getting dog food. And I told him, oh, do you want to come with me? And he's like, yeah, sure. We go, and as I'm putting the dog food in the cart, there's this woman at the end of the aisle with two children in her cart. And she's like, is this why you left the house to be with her? And in my mind, I'm just like, what the hell is happening? It's like, is she yelling at me?
Yeah.
And she's coming straight towards me. She gets to my face.
Damn.
And then she tells me, do you know this man is a married man? And his name, I'm not even going to say his name. Let's call him David. And David's like, baby, hold on. This is not what you think. This is not, and he's holding her back. And I was
Fuck.
So ashamed of myself. But even though I didn't know, but I felt like, oh my God, I'm the other woman.
Yeah.
I'm the other woman. And so I literally, as he's trying to hold her back, I run. I run out of that store.
I would. I'd be like, nah, I'm not dealing with this shit.
I run from being ashamed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because I didn't know I was the other woman. I just thought this guy was just. He told me he was going through a divorce. He has 2 kids. He wasn't. He lied to me, and I just remember. And somehow this woman ended up finding out my address and coming to my home.
Holy crap, man!
To yell at me, and thank goodness I was not at home.
Oh, nice.
Thank goodness. And at the time I was living with my parents, and my dad told me, he's like, do not come here. There is this crazy lady looking for you. And so
messy.
Yeah. You can only say, right? Oh my God. So I just felt like it was getting my heart broken. Like if it was my first time, because I was a clean slate.
Right. It's like, that's the first thing afterward, God.
Yes.
It's like, all right, I trust men again. And you get a sociopath with a freaking wife and kids. Shit. He's so good with his words. Fucking sociopath. Gosh.
Oh my God. It's
David. If that's even your real name, which it's not.
Oh my God. So it's like, it felt like it was like a heartbreak, like when that first heartbreak, and it was so horrible. I cried, and I was just remember thinking like, no, I said my heart was going to be open, and the kid I'm going to keep it open. It just wasn't the result that I wanted, but I'm going to keep it open.
Yeah.
And I had a personal coach at the time.
Nice.
So thank goodness it was because it was able to get out of my head, because I could easily be like
spiraled.
And real bad, real quick, real quick.
Yeah.
And so thank goodness. And so fast forward a little bit, and that's when I actually found who is now my husband. It's Ryan, and he
let's go.
And he came into my life, but we were just friends in the beginning, because I was just like, oh, like I'm still kind of heartbroken. I'm still my heart's gonna be open, but it's still broken, and it was
continually.
And so. But you know what? It opened, all of that made space for him to walk into my life, and that quality of a man. And that's how I saw it, like, oh, I needed to go through all of this.
Right.
To be able to obtain this amazing thing.
And isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah.
Sheesh.
And it's just, and it's been amazing. And I feel like, it just feels like everything that had to happen for me to be where I'm at right now. And it's just completely grateful. So grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will never regret anything that happened, ever. Like, I'm so grateful that it did. It had to happen.
Yeah.
To make space for this. And so, I just feel like like, that was just, like I said, that was just the beginning of a bunch of things that just transformed into my life. And now that's why probably I resonate with a lot of things that you say, because it's like, there's a lot of people that are like, that don't want to go, what is the word I'm looking for? That I think they're so busy wrapped up in their story, but there's so much power when you just own it and just choose it and accept it.
Yeah.
Instead of resisting it and just be with it. And I feel like that's why when you, like, all those things that you say, I was like, wow, that's exactly, he just, like, it just resonates so much.
100%. Yeah.
Because it's like taking full ownership is so much freedom. And there's so much peace.
Yeah.
And I want it. And the reason why I said yes to being here is because I want people to obtain that. Yeah. And not like I'm going to force you to have that, but it's like a bridge. Like, this is the bridge.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of that.
I hope. I'm thankful that you are living it and want to be a part of it. I'm honored to be sitting here and hearing your story. And yeah, we can't force it. One of the things that I talk about on here a lot is sovereignty, and it's funny. I had a friend who was, made a post about sovereignty, like, sovereignty for me is this, that, and that, and that, and that. I'm like, what the fuck? She's like, what's sovereignty to you? I'm like, sovereignty to me is owning your reality creation, whether you, or being responsible for your reality creation, whether you own it or not. She's like, oh, I love that. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do people think sovereignty is? Like, hold on, it's like, and that's why my new book is going to be called The Reframe, because there's a lot of stuff that we need to reframe. There's a lot of this black and white old story going on right now in the world, where it's like the victimhood story, like, oh, you did this happened, blah blah blah. There's a lot of like this very, words are also being used in certain contexts and being canceled, and it's like, hey, let's actually reframe the words. We don't have to burn the thing down, right? We don't have to burn everything down. We can reframe it, right? And once again, a part of sovereignty is being responsible for your reality creation, right? Which means how you perceive your reality and then how you respond to it. If a word is hurting you, change the fucking meaning of the word in your own self so that it doesn't hurt you. I mean, only we have personal agency over that, like you've said. And so there's so much there in regards to being a part of that change is us embodying it and eternalizing conversations like this. Another part of it is, I guess, teaching it, like how you teach it through how you show up on your social media platforms, how you show up in your coaching, how you show up as an entrepreneur in all these ways, how you show up in your relationship, and with friends. And it's also a part of that, like that, I guess what I'm essentially pushing is this reframe culture, right? Which is where we not only take accountability for our own stories, but how do we choose to heal ourselves in this world and move forward in a good way without burning Babylon down again, Because it's like, oh, well, everything's cyclical. It's like, okay, well, cool. We can create that reality, or we can choose a different reality where we actually do something truly revolutionary, and not in the sense of, revolution, like we're going to fight against the tyrant, but more so like, oh, how can we actually revolutionize change, create something new, And I feel like, although as much on this channel as some of it may be like complaining, I think it's also creating, It's almost like through the quote unquote, if I was cynical, I could see this as complaining, complaining about the bad stuff that's happening in the world and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, I feel like it's like finding inspiration in regards to what people have gone through, finding relativity there. Like, whoa, this, maybe I can't relate. Some people will absolutely relate to your story. Some people won't, but they will feel it. And they'll see how you've traversed it. They'll see the choices that you've made and be like, wow, holy shit, that's like entirely different than my story, but it gives me hope that I can do the same. Yeah. And in that also choose to, potentially reframe events in my life, reframe relationships, reframe the way that I choose to navigate words in this culture that's obviously, for whatever reason, I personally think it's a benevolent experience that's choosing to disempower us. Because I feel like the way that you expedite consciousness is through putting it in a space of potential like struggle or pressure. And I feel like the United States right now specifically is like a rebellious teenager. It's like the teenager that's like, there's stuff moldy, underneath some clothes that, was supposed to be thrown out, and there's clothes are everywhere, there's stuff everywhere, and it's like, fucking clean up your room. And it's like, fuck you, dad or mom or whatever. And it just gets so messy that it's like, oh, it starts to stink and all this stuff's happening. It's like the individual is like, oh shit, yeah, maybe I should clean up the room. Oh God, it's gotten really bad.
Yeah.
And maybe then there's like a renaissance of like, okay, maybe the room isn't going to be, for one, it gets clean, but maybe it gets designed in a way that's more functional and feels better and is more feng shuied, These are all analogies, but you get what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I feel like that's where we're at, because it can be easy to be hopeless right now for people who are in our space and people who are potentially a lot younger than us. Like the Gen Zers and stuff, we were just like, what the fuck is going on with this world? It's sick. There's no morals, ethics, values. Like people are, obviously the disempowered victim narrative, like the glamorized prostitute narrative.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
And I feel like it's stuff like this, like conversations like this. This is what's gonna start shifting the culture. Yeah. And I feel like this is what's needed, and it's not really touched upon, especially the hard conversations. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like people are avoiding feeling that. Right. And they do anything not to feel that. Yeah. And I think that's why my platform, I share a lot. And I get a lot of messages, especially for women, because they can resonate more with my story. It doesn't mean that men don't. Yeah. But most women are more open, especially nowadays. I was reading a statistics that is said 1 out of every 4 women in the United States have been sexually abused. Mm-hmm. So it's out there. It's just not talked about. Yeah. And especially like being brave enough to being okay with putting yourself out there. Yeah. And I think that's some people are saying, they tell me, it's like, you're so brave for sharing this. It's like, I don't think I really think about, I share it not thinking that I'm brave. I share it because it makes a space for other people to be able to be authentic with themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's something that it starts with us, with these type of conversations. And this is if we have more of this is what's going to slowly shift the culture.
Agreed.
Definitely.
Yeah, agreed. And I have to say that being a very all right, so this is a topic we can get into, as well as what is a woman? What does a strong woman look like? What do women need to see? What do women need to hear and model? Or what are specific empowered models look like, and how do they show up, right? Because in my opinion, just like I was telling you before we got on and started rolling, is that for me it was very difficult to know who to ask in regards to women that I know to be on the podcast, because it is popular to be disempowered. It is popular to cherry pick your victimhood. It's very popular, especially in the conscious community, to be like, oh, I own this, I own that, and blah, 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 and not own your trauma. And not own the man-hating, man-blaming narrative of the neo-feminist movement, right? Yeah. Which is very different than the original feminist movement where it started, right? There's there's for me at least, and please tell me if that it doesn't resonate with you, but for me, if an individual is not navigating and seeing everything through a lens of personal accountability, then they're not actually seeing clearly. Like, for instance, I don't care whether it's BLM, LGBTQ, women's rights, racism, sexism, whatever. The whole gamut for me comes back to the individual choosing how they choose to perceive their reality and then respond to it, and taking ownership of all of their traumas and all their things, and not blaming someone else, and coming from that empowered space. That's it. It doesn't matter what you size, it doesn't matter what you are, right? But what does end up being created, and what I'm seeing, is that there is these distortion gyres or swirls that people get caught in, where it's like, oh yeah, I belong to this, and then there's people in that specific locale or label that it's like, oh, see, we're angry about this, and we're not in the space we want to be, or we're hurt, and this is happening. and this caused it. And so make it right, heal our pain.
Yeah.
Even though they can never heal their pain, which is something you very well know. Mm-hmm. And so for one, it's a futile venture to try to get, point B to heal point A's pain, because it's only an individual effort. And two, there's nothing that person can give that can make it right.
Yeah.
And, there's so many examples of that.
Oh, yeah.
But ultimately, it does come to the level of individual accountability of like, okay, what am I capable of doing? How am I capable of showing up? What's the most effective thing for me to do? Is it to wallow in self-pity? Maybe I need to do that enough to the point where I'm like, fuck it, I can do it. I think it's individual on a lot of levels. For me, it goes into like the spiritual level of like, I feel like our divine parent, God, creator, spirit, whatever, wants the same for us as a human parent would want for their kids. Which means that our God, our creator, spirit would want us to be better than them, more than them, be loved unconditionally, like literally everything that you would want for your own child.
Yeah.
And therefore that comes with a level of responsibility and in the sense of like what power we have in regards to free will. Because just like a parent, you have to decide, okay, I love you. I can't protect you from everything. And you also make your own decisions. How much do I lead you and try to guide you and be there for you while also allowing for you to be liable for the consequences of your own actions?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm learning that because my little cousin, he came from Mexico. Well, he was born here, but he was sent to us from Mexico so he was born here, but at birth, he kind of went to Mexico with his family. They decided like, no, we're done being in the United States.
Gotcha.
We don't want to be here. So they left and they took him in Hidalgo. And it's a little ranch. It's like very tiny, no city. It's a tiny town. And, but at the age of 13, my uncle's like, call my dad. He's like, hey, like, can you take in my kids? Because we want them to have a better future. And my parents had to have a really hard conversation. And they're like, okay, yeah, it's okay. So we've been taking care of them, right? Well, their names are Karen and Edwin. And at the age of 13, and now Edwin's 19, I think he's about to turn 20 this year. And so I've known him for almost 7 years. And oh my God, he's like my little brother and also like my little child, because we had to take him, like me and Ryan had to, at one point we had to take care of him and take care of or make decisions. And I mean, we didn't really, we had to choose it. We had to accept it because my parents were kind of getting tired and irritated because he's not listening to my parents at the time. He was like 16, 17. He wasn't listening to my parents anymore because he's like, you're not my real dad and da-da-da.
Right.
And so it was a lot of that. And he's a teenager. And so I had to talk to Ryan, and I was just like, can we be the ones to like, because if he gets sent back to Mexico, like, he's going to go back to his town, and over there, it's so easy to get pregnant at 16 and have a kid. And they're like, that's it. That's your life. And you see, that's so normal. And I was just like, I already love him, and I'm not willing to step back. Like I'm going to have to step in. And so me and Ryan had to step in. And so we decided like, okay, maybe we can enroll him into getting into boxing, and if he gets his grades better, he's going to stay in boxing, and so many things that we had to like really like think about. But once he hit 18, he finished with better grades than he had ever finished.
Wow.
But he didn't, like, there was still a resistance there. Like, he didn't want to, he only has a few credits just to finish his high school. But I know that there's a blockage there for him because there's like so much sense of unworthiness. Because first of all, he would share with me like the stories, and I love my uncle so much. You know, his dad, his name is Pablo. I love him so much, but I love him as an uncle, as a human being, but he's not that great of a parent.
Right.
He would forget him all the time. There would be sometimes that this school would be so far. It's the only school that's around there. He has to walk miles and miles in the middle of fields just to get to his house. And there'd be so many times where he'd just be forgotten. And there was no phone. So at the time, he didn't have a phone or nothing. So he'd be like, oh, crap, they forgot about me again. So he'd have to walk home. And it would be pitch black by the time they get there. And they'd be like, oh, go get it. Oh, Edwin, you're here. Can you go get us some milk? And so they would send him back out. And it's like the kid that's not really loved. And so I would just told myself, like, I am unwilling for him to go back to Mexico to that. Like, the only thing that he's going to fall in under as is he's going to get a girl pregnant real quick, and he's going to want to leave home, and he's going to be an alcoholic just like his dad. Right. I am unwilling to do that. And for him, like, I'm not.
Break those generational cycles.
Yes. Yeah. And so I just, and so now, fast forward, now he's about to be 20. And I was like, Edwin, you need to get your driver's license. What are you doing with your driver's license? Edwin, you need to finish you need to finish your school. What are you going to do about that? But you know what? Me and Ryan had to have a conversation about that because he's already 18. He needs to think for himself. He got to stop being his mom.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of like I'm still struggling with it, but now I'm like, if he's gonna fall on his butt, he's gonna fall on his butt, and I'd rather him fall now than him being like just continue resisting me. Yeah. And so I have to love him from afar, and I'm just gonna wait till he hits that rock bottom, but I have to be okay with him falling.
That's the last guest that I had on the podcast, we were talking about him being a father, a father of 3, and like having his kids grow up into teenagers and dealing with very similar topics, because it's like when the child goes through something, traumatic, or like, the world rears its ugly face and like something bad happens to them or something like that. It's like, first thing is like, hey, I told you so, like, don't do this, don't do that. And then at the same time, it's like, how are they feeling? What's going on with them internally? Like, what is more effective for the child or for the youth? Is it to be shamed, or is it to be heard, seen, loved, right? Like, what makes the bigger, because ultimately all of it's coming from love. All of it's coming from care. And yet how much of what we choose in that moment, whether it's on autopilot from our subconscious, what we were raised with, of how our parents handled us, or how much of it is a conscious choice as to what, like, having a moment to, before we step into the decision to like take a step back and be like, okay, what if I use my ability, to go into like the 5D and like have oversight over what happens in the 3D and be like, oh, it could go this trajectory if I say this, it could go this trajectory, and actually have that analysis and be like, what's actually the most impactful, effective thing for me to say and how to show up that leads to potentially, at least from what I can conceive, the most desired outcome and result, right? And obviously so many people are such on autopilot that they don't handle their own trauma, let alone figure out how to appropriately talk to their children, which is why, honestly, we're so fucked up. Because like people are not only handling their own trauma, they're passing it on to kids. Yeah. Epigenetically, like through genes as well as through behaviors and so forth, right? But yeah, that's kind of the people think about being a parent as like, oh yeah, you're a parent, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, there's only certain people who are actually taking parenting seriously, which is like, okay, I'm handling my own shit. I'm doing what I need to do, whether that's crazy physical practice, whether that's medicine journey, whether that's like dancing, 4 times a week, whether that's whatever it is, so that I handle my own emotional regulation and handle my own trauma and work through that, so that I can then show up in the best way that I can for my kids, and then figure out how I can also like appropriately conduct myself around them and or communicate to them. And a big part of that delicate balance is like, how much do you let them, like you said, fall in their own butt or suffer? How much do you try to police them? And one of the things I was talking about with my last guest was also how, and I say this from personal experience because I grew up a very sheltered kid. I was always a really happy kid. And it was like a really weird, exhausting dance between my dad getting mad at me, shaming me for having what I had, getting mad at me for not being responsible or being on the ball, but then also giving me such a comfortable life. And it's like, it's funny because it's like, how are you getting mad about having a comfortable life. I'm grateful for who I am. And at the same time, if you were to ask me, let's say I'm financially even more abundant than my father was, which is my plan, right? I would do things very differently for my children based on how the experience that I had, because it's kind of like, and we were, once again, we were talking about this in regards to his children, is that like, you want to protect your loved ones from everything. You want to protect them from pain. You want to protect yourself from pain. Like, run from pain, seek pleasure, right? It's like humanity. And at the same time, the conscious, decision is like sometimes to embrace pain, like you did, for the betterment of everything. And in these cases, it's like, how much does trying to keep the individual from pain or from the reality of things, and then just being like, hey, don't do that because this will happen, but then they have no real conception of like the reality of reality, right? Like they're not actually witnessing it themselves. They go and test it. It's kind of like little children, like, first we're like, oh, does this break? Like, what is this? Like, what's our reality? What are the limits? What are the boundaries? What are the confines? And so it's really easy to tell someone, hey, these are the boundaries. But oftentimes the child has to touch the flame in order to be like, oh shit, it's hot, right? We learn from experience. Otherwise, it's just hypothetical in our eyes. And so it's almost like more effective for us to actually put individuals in circumstances where they can actually see like, hey, this is what could happen. Do you want to choose this or not? And that's complex, and I don't know exactly how to do that in every situation. But it is a very, very delicate, dance and decision making, because you could try to do everything right and it just blows up in your face, So like I commend you for that, and I'm I don't know what the right decision is, but ultimately all we can do is the best we can, and ultimately you're coming from love. It's just a really funny thing because I feel like everyone comes from love. Even people who do really effed up things, they're like, oh, I want my family to get ahead, or I want to make sure my family is taken care of for, how many generations. It's like, maybe that's pride, but it's also love. Maybe it's love in a really distorted, fucked up way, Maybe at the very top of people controlling everything. Maybe at the end of the day, it's like love for their family. Who knows? But anyways.
Yeah. And I feel like I forgot what book I was reading, but there was like a book saying, do you see all these people in jail saying like, oh, but it wasn't my fault, or I did it because X, Y, and Z there. And there's always a really good reason for why they're in there. Yeah. And it's not because like, oh, I really just wanted to harm that person. Like it never occurs to them like, no, I was the good person and I had to do this. And I had to do this for my family or for blah, blah, blah. And it's always a really good reason. Yep. Yeah. So I feel like deep down inside, everybody wants to come from a good space. Doesn't mean that they make good decisions, but it's like the intention was there, but I guess it just didn't land, or the result wasn't what they wanted.
Right. Yeah. Or like, like your father, potentially could have. It's like, something like that. It's like, hey, this kind of lends itself to, once again, another thing I was talking with the last guest about, which is that although we have been in civilization for a certain how many thousands of years, whatever it may be, there's also a certain level of village mentality that I feel like we still have that, it's like, for instance, sometimes when I see men who are not just weak, but like really just like super duper, just like, oh, I don't care at all about keeping myself, fit and ready. It really bothers me, and it makes me feel this subconscious meaning to be like, hey, get with it. Like, and I'm like, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel like bullying or punking this? I don't do it, obviously, but like, what is that coming from? Is that because it happened to me? Or is that actually because there's a certain level of like, back in the day, there was rites of passage for men, right? For boys. Some of the boys wouldn't make it, and it was a big deal because like you have to be able to show up to not only hunt and provide for the village, but protect them as well. And so it's like, and it's like, I'm just in the city with these people. Now we have cities and we're around all these people, but realistically, there's an aspect of it where it's like, hey, how come there's this weak link in our village right now? What's going on here? This makes me feel like my family's unsafe and I need to do something about it. I'm like, whoa, what the heck's quiet down, whatever's in there, and I don't like shame it, and I don't shame myself because obviously I'm not taking it upon myself, but I'm being very vulnerable and honest and transparent. Like, this is going on within me, right? Like, why? You know? And similarly to our children or, you know, our family members, et cetera, it's like, hey, you know, like, and your dad, like, yo, this guy is going to harm more people in the village. Your family is the village, really. But like, yo, we got to take him out. You know, that's how it was back in the day. Yeah. You don't, like, loose ends, you know, weak links end up bringing down the whole entire ship. Yeah. So, and yet nowadays we have jails, which are businesses in themselves, right? Prisons.
That's like a whole,
you know what topic. I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, the way that your dad could have gone to that same space. And yeah, you know, it's a wild thing, because I feel like at the core of it all, we do want to love each other, and there's like an innate level sensibility of like, okay, we're still someone in village mode. I think maybe that's because that's our natural operating
form,
I
think so.
You know? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's definitely a lot of that's rooted still a lot in our culture, and it's within everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. Just
Agreed.
Like, like the man should be the provider and the woman should be, you know, like, what is it? Not
nurturer.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, you know, being in a community, you know, like a community that is trustworthy, you know, trustworthy, protected, and so forth, right? Because it's like, and nowadays we like, oh, hi neighbors, like we're not friendly with our neighbors. It's like a totally different world.
I know.
Yeah. It's a very individualistic world, and it,
yes. Yeah, and I don't even know when that change happened, because I remember growing up and we knew our neighbors.
Totally.
I would hang out with, like,
the 90s.
We would be playing with our neighbors. Like, with the, I didn't even know when that happened. I just all of a sudden, I felt like I blinked, and then now it's like the neighbor, it's like, oh, that's the creepy neighbor. I'm like, that's
Well, man, there were a lot of like serial killers who came out, and a lot of stuff that came out. So I guess that would maybe, I don't know. But I mean, I think it's happened since forever, but you know, and then I don't know, some people that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But you know, something I do want to ask you about, I think we touched on a little bit,
okay.
Or maybe I rambled and it got out of the weeds, but you being a strong, empowered, accountable woman, female, however we want to label all these labels, don't get triggered, reframe it in your own mind, whatever you want me to say. How do you feel that, or what's something that you would want to say to women, or how do you feel like women should or ought to be showing up? Like, it's not okay to should on everyone, right? And at the same time, there are certain levels of like ethics and morals and like, you know, levels of accountability and modeling, right? So when we talk about that, what does that look like for you?
For women, right?
Yeah. We can talk about men after too. I'd love to hear that. Let's talk about it all. Yeah.
So for women, it's a really good question. I haven't really thought about it. But I think it all comes down to accountability. But that does, in an ideal world, everybody would be that, right? But it's unrealistic, because I mean, I feel like maybe deep down the road it will be.
Yeah.
But right now, at least in my lifetime, I don't think that will happen. But as long as, if everybody can just be accountable, whether you're female or male.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what the world would look like.
It'd be dope. I mean, that's my goal.
Yeah, because it was, okay, so for example, like, I have more girlfriends than guy friends. So, but I have both, right? So, the girls that I am really close to, every time they talk to me about their problems, I don't, and like, they're like, oh, but my husband, or this and that, or the man, or the guy I was dating. I'm like, but what were you bringing to the table? What
I bet they love you. Like, fucking loser always tells me, what about you?
But you know what? They come to me because, first of all, whatever they say, I don't come from a space of judgment. I have so much space for their quote unquote trash. Because I don't make it mean anything. I see
you
under all of that. I still see the gold that they are.
Nice.
So, and like one of my closest friends, she just got, her husband passed away. And so she has 2 kids, and she's now going into the dating world, and this girl's like hot. Okay. She's like super hot, like mom. So she can get any guy. I have a word for
that. I don't forget what it is, but. Just kidding.
So she can get any man she wants, right? But she's very picky, obviously, because she also has 2 kids. She needs to know who can be the provider. And I remember her telling me, like, going into the dating world after being married for like 15 years, it's like it's totally different. Yeah. And she was just sharing, like, all these men, like, all they want is to have sex with you. And I was just like, ooh, like, okay, tell me more. Tell me more. And so it just be listening, and she's like ranting about how men are not like how they used to be. And it's like, I don't think I'm going to really like end up marrying anybody because all these men out there, whatever's available is like trash. And I'm like, okay, I got that that's what it occurs to you. But where are you, what are you bringing to the table to begin with?
Right.
How are you finding these men? It could also be the quality of the men that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's just like keeping my friends accountable. And some people really like that.
Yeah.
And some of them, maybe they take some space to kind of like back off, but then they come back.
That's good.
Yeah. So it's like, I know that the circle that I do have, it may not be big, but it's a good circle. And I know, especially with women, like it's so easy to get sucked into drama. I am so good at making sure there's space for me, and I'm here as your friend. But there's also, don't bring all of that. Don't bring all of that drama to me and talk to me about it unless you're willing to do something about it.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that's, and there, I remember we used to be a big group of girls. There was like 10 of us. And like 2 years ago, obviously when you get that many females together, I mean, there's always going to be something that's happening.
Gossip girls.
Yes.
Yeah. They made a show about it.
Yeah. And so they obviously, now my family group is like my friends are all split up. And everybody decided to take sides. But I'm the person that talks to both sides, because I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't believe you guys are all that drama and whatever you guys are talking amongst each other. I don't believe none of that, because I know deep down inside you guys really love each other. There's some hurt there, and there's unwillingness to take accountable that everybody was a part of it. And it's not just like, oh, but she did this or she did that or blah, blah, blah. Like, no, everybody was a part of the drama.
Right.
Because you were in it. And I'm in it too, but I'm willing to be okay with whatever story you guys want to create about it. So I feel like if everybody's accountable for their own actions, females or males, it would be such, it would be such an amazing world. There wouldn't be war. We wouldn't need a military. We wouldn't need none of that, because everything would be able to be resolved through communication and words.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the that's the utopia for sure. The place that does not exist. Sounds amazing. For me, I can't say that I know that it can't happen, because I don't know what can happen. What I do know is that with the way that the world is, and it's like consistent, like creation and like proliferation of all things, like always doing something new. I feel like spirit is always inhabiting and creating itself through making new plants or animals or whatever. Like, I don't know. There's no way for us to always keep tabs on that. We're like, oh, we found all these species, but we don't know 95% of what's in the ocean, right? We don't know shit. Anyways, point being is that, like, as spirit wants to move through, as God wants to move through life and inhabit different vessels and so forth, it just happens. It just keeps being an offsprout of creation and life, that the variety is always there. And so in that, it feels foolish of me to think that there would not always be variety in regards to personalities and ways of being that people are. That's why there's sociopaths and psychopaths. That's why there's, all these different disabilities and so forth that just like create different spices to the soup, you know?
Yeah.
And yet one of the things that I do find, once again, when I say insidious, it's like, it's always, I either choose to believe everything's for a benevolent purpose or for a malevolent purpose. And I believe that it's for a benevolent, and that it is pushing progress regardless of whether it's actually causing harm in the immediate moment. Like that will lead to something good, right? Because it always does, right? Like your tragedy, my tragedy, like our tragedy always leads to something good. Tragedy begets opportunity, right? And so, but with that, I have an issue, and I think that's why, you know, this is the resurgence or the surgence of us doing stuff like this, is to be like, hey, enough with putting out the narrative and the agenda of disempowerment and victimhood. Because not only are we obviously not all on the space of being accountable, but a lot of people are being fed and it's being glamorized to be disempowered, to not be accountable, to be in victimhood. And it starts to become identities for people. And the thing that really messes me up, ultimately, I love my family. Number one, show up for my family. I love my friends. I love planet Earth. I love humanity. I love all of it. And at the same time, like, there's only so much love you can throw around. But it does pain me, and it does feel purposeful and dishonorable for me not to do something about preventing and or reframing and or shifting the agenda towards putting forth this disempowered victimhood narrative. Because it hurts me to see really powerful, really potent people utilize their energy and just literally just like, blah, just put it all over the ground and not use it to paint a picture, not use it to empower others, not use it to heal others, not use it to love others. And the funny thing is when you confuse someone to that extent, like, and you see it right now, you know, in the news and stuff, certain individuals that are coming from a place of hurt, they're just like, oh my God, I have so much potency. I have so much passion. I have so much love. I have so much energy here. And this thing, I'm being told this is the thing to be mad about. I'm going to use it in this way and just be emotionally unregulated. It's like, damn. Missed out on that being something really cool. Could have been something cool. Instead, it's emotionally unregulated, you know, tantruming. It's all these things. It's that whole thing. So, and yet I have to say that some of the victimhood has been, you know, you said you don't listen to the radio. I didn't listen to the radio or radio music until like 2018, 19, when I hadn't since like 2007, right? Because I was like, okay, let me see how I can integrate back into this. Let me see how I can be more relative. And I have to say that although the context of a lot of it is trash or like negative, like some of these beats are hot. Some of the music is hot, you know? And, you know, I think we can all agree, if we're being honest, like the messaging isn't good, you know? And
that's what's being put out. And that's what the youth is listening to.
And how many, you know, yes. And something I want to ask you too, like one of the things that I say about like the OnlyFans epidemic, right? Like never before people complain about things being hard, and they are. It's hard to live an honorable life and get ahead. It's hard to be, or it's difficult, I should say, to get ahead and be honorable. It's not impossible. It's very easy, and usually easy things are not valued. At the same time, in this current economy, it's like, whoa, I could, you know, do pictures of myself, you know, as a woman and make, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a month. And if I utilize that right and set that up financially, I could be set for life. Like, that has to be appealing to people in this economy rather than working for Chick-fil-A or something like that. And yet, there's a lot that comes with that. There's a sacrifice of a lot for the women. And then the thing that comes up for me is like, obviously women are accountable for their choices, but the men are the ones supporting it. The business would not exist without weak men. To me, I end up feeling like, okay, the men are like the leader provider, right? You know? So it's like, I feel responsibility for helping men not be weak so that they don't support that system that then ends up providing the opportunity for our women to be taken advantage of like that. And at the same time, you could also say, oh, women don't do it. But it's like, who's really Where does the accountability start there? And how do you feel about that? That whole system?
Ooh. It's like a circle. That's what it feels like.
True. Yeah.
It feels like one big giant circle. I feel like if it all starts with upbringing, right? So if you don't teach your kids that your core morals are so important.
Yeah.
It's so easy for them to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I just feel like we have been failing our children and the youth in the core morals.
Yeah.
And we've kind of let that go, especially now with social media. It's so or even just the internet.
Yeah.
Ever since the internet started, the internet brought so many amazing things.
Totally.
And it made it so easy to also to have, what is that word I'm looking for? It's so easy for bad things also to show up because it's right there. It's
accessible.
It's
Accessibility.
so easily accessible to you.
Everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like we just got lazy.
Totally.
We just got lazy, especially to be a parent. It's so easy to be like, okay, the baby's crying, give him a tablet.
Yeah.
Right. And then, but then what they're exposed to, whatever they want to, whatever it is.
And they're addicted.
And then they're addicted.
Yeah.
They're addicted. It's like there's more depression now in middle school and high school.
Yep.
There's kids in middle school that are putting makeup on that look like there should be 18.
The 90s, everyone was looking janky compared to now.
Yes.
Right? And that was the norm.
Yes.
The bar was here. Now it's up here.
Yeah,
and it's weird.
I remember in middle school, somebody said oh, this person's making out with this other person. And I was just like, what is making out?
Right.
And then they explained to me, it's the tongue and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ew, why would you want to do that with another person, let alone a guy? It was so, and it's now it's they have to their makeup is on point and they post it on Instagram and they're
losing their virginity at 11 or 12.
That's insane.
That's a norm now.
That's so insane.
Wild.
They're kids.
Yeah.
They're kids. And I feel like we just got lazy with the internet. It's so easily accessible. I feel like that was one big thing that's been pushed on us.
Yeah.
And I feel like, obviously it's stuff that we don't even know how to deal with because it's so new.
Yeah.
It's so new. And so we got lazy and then now we can't even be bored. There's no space for boredom because once you get bored a little bit, boom, you take out your phone, you get easily distracted.
Yeah. No more skip-its. Skip-its are dead.
I remember.
Imagine a skip-it and a smartphone. It's like, fuck, you kidding me? YouTube, bro.
I remember I was in high school, 9th grade when MySpace came around and I didn't even know what MySpace was. I was late to the party. Yeah. And then somebody told me, it's like, oh, yeah, so where you put a picture on and then you you write about yourself. And I was just the top, top 6, top 8? Yeah. Oh my God. It was.
Before that, it was Zanga.
I don't even know what that is because I was late.
I'm a couple years older than you guys. Yeah.
I was so late to the party, but I just remember I think it's just it came down to the internet became so easily accessible and people got lazy because of it. It's just so and so people just it's that and then we're losing our core values, and I just feel like one can't exist without the other. You said weak men create these, these women that are willing to do all these things.
It supports their business. Yeah.
But it's also weak women that don't.
True.
And I don't think weak is the word. I think it's more like maybe their parents didn't have that heart conversation about, hey, these are our core values. This is what's going to make you valuable.
Well, some do, which is kind of the effed up thing, because some of these women do come from really, really solid households, and they choose to do it because it's the most optimum financial situation they could choose. There's literally nothing else they could do that would give them $1 million a month or something.
But maybe it also comes down to worthiness.
I think it all of that. I think it's like the environment that we're in, where it's like, hey, you know, whatever, like everyone's doing it. Why not? Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like I'm the only one. It's not like everyone's going to know my name necessarily. Like, because it's like only so many years ago, women were like committing suicide over leaked photos. Now it's like a normal thing. And now people are selling them. And not only are people selling them, lots of people are selling, you know, it's like it's a thing. So I feel like that also, because some people have come from good homes and they make bad choices. They get addicted to drugs, all the things, you know? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of their path towards healing. So it's like, we can't judge it, or we can, but, you know, it doesn't make sense to judge it when people can turn their lives around and they can rectify things. But yeah, I do find it weird how those would not exist without the men, or it wouldn't exist without the men, but then the women are the ones doing it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's hard to like place the blame or like the responsibility, because it's really both.
Yeah, and I feel like it all comes. What I said, it's like the worthiness. It's like people are not willing to have like these conversations anymore.
Yeah.
And so, since those conversations is what creates a human being, like if those conversations aren't happening, then this is the impact. This is is going to show up.
True.
And I think that's for both men and women.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So, especially now in today's culture, it's so easy to compare. So when you don't have that strong point of like this, I know I'm worthy. I mean, I am valuable. Yeah. I am amazing. Mm-hmm. If people really knew that in like deep down,
right,
they can be shown all these opportunities to do like OnlyFans, and it wouldn't even occur as an opportunity. Like, oh yeah, that is something I can do. Like, no, it wouldn't even come up.
Right.
It wouldn't even come up because it's not in their filter that's something that they would do.
Yeah,
because their worthiness is right there.
Yeah, and I think I'd say that's absolutely true. I think also honor is a big thing as well, because if we don't consider the impact of our future legacy, we won't care about anything like that. And if we don't think about our past ancestry, we don't care about that. Like one of the quotes that I just recently posted was that our ancestors sacrificed way too much for us to play small, right? Mm-hmm. And I also talk about having grief online, you know, in order to actually be able to access gratitude, and in doing so also humility, right? It kind of like all works. It's intertwined, because like we can't really be fully grateful if we're not really having grief online to the point where we're like, oh my God, this is finite. You know, oh, this isn't going to last forever. Oh man, it grounds us to the point of like full gratitude. Like, man, I'm just grateful to be breathing right now. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful. I want to connect with the people I love, and all of that. And then when we talk about worthiness, I love where you're coming from with worthiness. And obviously, you've done so much work on yourself, and you've had to choose it. For me, I always try to debunk everything. Like that's kind of how my brain works. I'm like, okay, it's like what they call devil's advocate. It's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Good point. But what about this? What about that? And one of the things that really switched things around for me with worthiness is, and obviously this is a choice too, but once again, coming back to the divine parent thing, right? So someone could be saying mantras all the time, like, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, but still navigating, trying to bypass and or try to bandage up a core wound that still exists there, that won't shift and completely like be removed and or like transformed into something new until it's reframed. And if not given a good enough reason to reframe, it never will. And the reason that really shifted everything for me, at least to the point where it's like, oh, uncanny. Like there's no way I can go back now, is that if the divine parent wants the same as a human parent wants for their kids, then that means the love is so great and the power that the individual holds is so great of creation and destruction. You're literally God's child, right? Imagine the progression of God. It's like, oh, blasphemy. Oh. It's like, no, that's what you are. Yeah. You know, and we can choose to deny it, but that is what you are. You know, that doesn't mean that we're trying to be like, oh, look at me. I bet we're all there. The platform is all there. And also the expectation, not in the sense of like, I expect you to do this, otherwise shame. It's like, no, I expect you to do it because you have the opportunity, but you have the option to fulfill that expectation or to not, because I love you enough to give you that free will to do so. Right? So the worth is not only so giant, but it's like overwhelming to the point where not only are we not worthy, we're so fucking worthy that it's frightening, and it's so much easier to be like, oh, actually, no, I'm small. Oh yeah, actually, no, like that's not true. That's not true. Yeah, blasphemy. Oh, well, yeah, keep me weak. Oh, safety. You think you're weak too? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's be there. Because that shit was fucking powerful, and it was scary how powerful it was. And I'm not ready to accept that yet.
Yeah, like they'd rather play small because it's more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's also easy. It's like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, we'll do the evil thing. We'll feed the evil. We'll feed the destruction. We'll feed the misery story. Right? And so, yeah, I completely agree. And yet, and I don't know how many people will even resonate with what I've said, but I just find, after being in the conscious community for so long, so many people doing the mantras and doing the work on trying to get their worthiness and never actually healing the core wound. Yeah. Because in order to heal that core wound, you actually have to reframe who the hell you are, who deserves to be worthy. Right?
Well, I feel like you don't really, it's like a lot of the times people are like, oh, I am, if I say all these affirmations long enough, they're going to become true.
Yeah.
It's like, no. That's not based on reality. Yeah. It's you have to take certain actions to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
So I feel like I haven't experienced the conscious community too much. I'm barely stepping into that.
Gotcha.
And at the same time, I'm being very aware.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of especially from what I've experienced a little bit, is like there's a lot of talking and a lot of sweet talking.
Totally.
But I don't know people enough to be like, are they actually doing what they say they're going to do?
Right.
But I feel like that could be every community too.
1,000%.
Because people are they rather not take the actions because it's so much easier to be comfortable and play small.
Yeah. But yeah, virtue signaling is virtue signaling across the board. Whether you're in the conscious community or whether you're in politics or whether you're wherever. Yeah. Everyone, it's like there's always people trying to look the part.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And so then they don't want to take the actual action. Yeah. So and I feel like that's most of the world, by the way.
Yeah.
That's most of the world. Like they want it.
Yeah.
Yet they don't take the actions to do it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a decision isn't really made until you actually start taking actions. Or before that, it's just like a wish.
True. Yes, it's definitely more like a wish. And I guess from where you're coming from too, it's like taking the action allows you to prove it to yourself and keep reinforcing it to the point where you start to actually transform into the being that is like, yeah, I'm worthy because look at where I've come. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've shown myself, through healing these wounds, or at least choosing intentionally to keep doing the things to move past it.
Yeah.
Right? Because my thing is definitely conceptual. And for me, it's fucking whoa, you're more than worthy. Oh shit, let's go. And yet, a lot of people will probably have to prove it to themselves, and that's always an individual choice.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Yeah, everyone's different, and everyone has their own path. And yet, I think what we both agree on is that people are going to do what they're going to do, and you can't save everyone. And at the end of the day, we can't force anyone to be accountable. But what we can do is not have a disempowered narrative that follows through our schooling and through our world and our media and stuff like that. One of the things that I would love to see is an empowered narrative, one that reinforces people's worth and their ability to own their choices, but also respects their sovereignty in that if they choose not to, then that's totally cool too.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's although, yes, I'd love to live in a utopia and stuff like that, I know that most likely is improbable and not necessarily the aspect of our, dualistic reality that we live in and all the gray in between that and all the different varieties that exist. So, I'm totally okay with people being in victimhood. I'm okay with, I don't know if I'm okay with it. I accept the fact that there are killers and this and that and all these things.
Accepting that it already is.
Yeah, that I always think of it there's a certain amount of oil and water in a jar. and you can shake it up and try to disperse it as much, but they're always going to be oil and water. You know, there's like the yin and the yang. And at the same time, it's like when you start confusing the water or the whatever the water is in this narrative, if you start confusing the water, like the good people, you know, not to say that bad people are, I don't know, oil. Get triggered, I don't care. Point being, if you try to confuse the good people that they are weak or that they are, you know, less than, like it creates this weird situation that we're in now.
Yeah.
And I just think that I would like to be at the space where it is reinforced that people are making their own decisions and their own choices, and I'm totally okay with them denying it. I'm totally okay with them denying it because they have their own right. But it's just like, hey, you're making this choice whether you own it or not. And if you own it, if you don't own it, that's totally cool. But we're reinforcing it. And I feel like that is a progression towards human consciousness.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like from what I'm hearing, from what you're sharing, is that you're listening to people and you're putting them, like you're seeing them up here, even though their actions are down here, but you're holding the space for them to rise up to it if they want to, but your bar is up there.
Yeah, or more like, you know, I just, all the, and maybe it'll never change. Like, that's the one thing I have to recognize is like, how much am I dipping into potential saviorhood? Because a part of what I talk about on here is like saviorhood or supreme altruism or the conscious revolutionary, which I used to be, was like, oh, I need to save everyone. It's like, I don't want to be there because I know that it's futile, right? And it's also not my responsibility and or right to impose on other people what to think and what to feel, right? All I can do is encourage, empower, and embody what I do. And at the same time, when there is an institution or institutions that are putting out this narrative that like, oh, you're less than, you're unworthy, blah, blah, and I see all these people that are like being disempowered and stuff like that, I don't know, naturally within me, I feel the right to talk against it, or I feel the passion to speak out against it. Does that mean I'm trying to save them, or does that mean that I'm just a part of the way that things flow? I'm open to reflection, but
I think you're just a stand.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a stand for people who step into their greatness.
Yeah.
And also be a stand if they choose to be their quote unquote their trashiness. Like give space for their humanity.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for that. Because as I'm engaging in this whole entire process of Magnanimous Collective, speaking towards all these things, it's like I know that I will learn along the way. I feel like if we are ever in that space of being capped off in our growth, that's very scary, and I don't trust that person. And if they feel like they, you know, if a person doesn't change every 5 years, something's wrong, right? Like I know that 5 years down the line, I might look at this stuff and be like, oh God, what the heck was he saying? And that's okay. You know?
I think we've all gone through that. I'm like, oh God, I can't believe I said that.
I think we're old enough now to know that, you know, you reach your 30s and it's like, oh yeah. I
look at somebody, I don't know if you still go on Facebook, but I have to do to my work. But it's like you see your memories, and then I sometimes I go on that and I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Yeah.
What the hell was I thinking? And can't believe people stayed my friend.
You know, trust me. Most of my friends are just like, got the job, got the wife, blah, blah, blah. And I've just been the black sheep doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So I'm just like, thanks for loving me, guys. They're like, what are you talking about? It's you. I'm like, I'm glad you see it that way. I love this. You know, what would you say? What would you say to the viewers that, I don't know, as words of wisdom, of guidance, like that you would, you know, from your heart, out of everything you've been through, that, you know, if they're in a dark time, if they're in a space like you were, where they're just like, man, no one's seen me, because no one might. There might not be a Lucy there to get them to that thing. You know what I mean? To that seminar. And obviously they can always choose something themselves, right? So what would you say to that type of person?
To seek for help. Whatever that looks like. For some people, for me, it was the seminar. Also for me, what also has been helping me is Buddhism. So I just seek for help from outside of that little circle that you were in. And And to be okay with being uncomfortable with looking at different things that may or may not work. But the thing is, you can't stay in the same place expecting a different result doing the exact same thing. So seeking for help. Whatever. It could be religion, it can be a seminar, it can be a therapist, it can be counseling, it could be, I don't know, it could be ecstatic dance. There's some people in there that are like, which is why I love going to those, even though I haven't been there in a while. But you see some people on the floor and they're just like being with themselves, and you can tell that they're working through something.
Yeah.
And just being okay with, and that's why I love that place. But for some people, it's dance. For me, it was dance too. Yeah. Which is why I love dancing, because there's for me, I consider myself somebody that's not that interesting. That's something I know it's a story.
Well, I think that might change after you watch this.
I don't know.
Holy shit.
But I always had that story in my head that I'm boring. Okay. So that I'm boring and I have to do all these amazing things to show that I'm not boring. Right. Like that's just my story. But look outside of yourself. Because sometimes we're in our heads. Actually, a lot of the times. Most of the time, we're in our heads. Yeah. And if you keep just being in your head, there's not going to be any resolution there.
True.
So if you just seek outside of yourself and being okay with looking for help, nobody in this world makes it by themselves. Agreed. Nobody. Agreed. There's not one person on this earth that made it by themselves.
Yeah.
So it's part of our nature that if we actually are open to be receiving, then it's part of our nature to be able to make it with the help of others.
Yeah.
It's just that now there's so many things thrown at us in our culture that we have to be independent and this and that. Like, no, we're not meant to make life happen by ourselves.
Agreed.
We're not. And it's okay to look for help. That doesn't mean you're less than. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're like easy target. It's none of that. So being okay with seeking outside of yourself.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for that. This whole entire thing would not be happening if it wasn't for the help of a coach helping me get out of my own fucking way.
Yeah.
And without the help of a therapist. I use BetterHelp. I've shouted them out a bunch of times on here. It's so easy. Jennifer, you're great. And I also, I think I've put out, on one of my quote posts, like, no one does anything great alone.
No.
And it's so, like, maybe it's my Japanese heritage, the gaman, just like, get it done, and like, the pride and all this stuff. But like, for so long, I was like, I can do it. Like, if I can get it done, like, why, I used to look at for one, I found out a lot of dark about the coaching space. So that also messed with me. Also, when we look into the mental health space with psychiatry, some good, a lot of dark. It's only been, we've stopped lobotomies like for what, 20 years now? 30, and everyone who has done something really great has had support, has had help.
Yeah.
And when you say seek out help, I couldn't agree more, because, obviously there are individuals who are energy vampires and they just are just like seeking pity everywhere and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like, just like how certain good individuals don't step up to the plate because they don't want to be seen as the weird sociopathic people who are doing the stuff out in the world and succeeding, and people can't see like, hey, there's something wrong with that guy. I don't trust him, but he's doing the thing and people love him. Like, I don't want to go and show up big because I don't want to be seen as that guy. I feel like also some of us, and I'd say it for myself, I don't want to reach out sometimes because I'm like, I don't want to be seen as this person that's super needy that I know of who just calls people and drains people of their energy.
But
right?
Yeah, but then where is that coming from?
Totally. It's a projection on myself.
Yeah. Yeah, because nobody's saying like, oh, Sean, you're being super needy right now.
Totally.
No, and I'm pretty sure nobody has ever told you that.
Totally.
So that's also something that you and trust me, I deal with it too.
Yeah.
For me, the person I call every time I have to get out of my head is right there. He's my husband.
There you go.
And because sometimes I am so into my head, like that I'm so wrapped up around it. I'm like angry at myself. I'm like crying because I'm so angry or something. But it's like this. If I don't step outside of my head, I'm gonna stay with this, or I'm not gonna be able to resolve this for myself.
Right.
And I love myself enough to be like, oh, I'm gonna put this pride aside. I'm just gonna make a call.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make a call. And sometimes it's kind of like putting that ego to the side.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's
being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's so okay to be vulnerable. I think that's what when people are vulnerable, is when people really get connected. And you give the people the gift to get connected to you through being vulnerable.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is Keep going.
No, go for it.
The conundrum. Who goes first? Well, I was just going to say that's kind of like the same as, having grief online, being able to be vulnerable, like being in that sensitive space where you're just like, hey, you know what, this is really where I'm at. And just like laying it out on the table and then giving the individuals the opportunity to connect, because when you provide the opportunity for grief for the other person, unless once again, it's in the space where it's like kind of unwarranted and kind of weird, usually it opens up the opportunity of like gratitude for the other person to be able to show you love.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, oh, wow, thank you for giving me the opportunity to love you, to support you, to maybe hold you. Like, that's weird in other circumstances. Like, hey, can I hold you? It's like, no, why? I'm good. What do you. These opportunities to connect deeper, to be able to love each other deeper and show up in ways that otherwise we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So and I think we all have those thoughts of like, I don't want to be needy, or I don't want to be a bother. For me, I don't want to be a bother.
Right. Totally. Same.
So I don't want to be a bother. And so that's why sometimes I don't seek out. And I don't seek out every single time, but I do like 80% of the time for me.
Yeah.
But that took so much practicing.
Yeah.
Because before I had no one. I mean, I was quiet from 7 to 23 practically.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to seek out for help. Yeah. And it's all programming. We're all just
100%.
We're all just a bunch of habits.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean that we are the habit. We just have habits.
Yeah.
It's not like, Sean, you are somebody that doesn't seek out for help. Like, no, you program yourself to do that, which means you can reprogram yourself to be any other way.
Totally. Yeah. And I can also create the accountability there. Like, I know that I'm talking to someone every week. I'm talking to 2 people every week. I'm talking to my coach and my therapist. And I can always seek out more if I need to as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I've talked to about in the pod is that sometimes
I feel like if people don't have,
for me and certain guys, like bros like to keep things light and have comedy and be like, what's up, bro? How you doing? And oftentimes sometimes the energy is so immense that to share it with a bro, it's like kind of like, I can't even talk to you right now because I'm going to spill my cup of shit all over you. Like, my red Kool-Aid's going to get on your white shirt. So I need somewhere that's like a place where I can pour it out so that at least it's not entirely full. And then I can be like, oh, hey, what's up, bro? How you doing? Otherwise, I'm going to turn down your call because it's like, bro, I can't even explain myself to you right now. It's so much.
Yeah. And I feel like that's also very healthy. Like I like with me, with my family, I think yesterday my dog ate my AirPods, and she's a 1-year-old, and we just adopted her.
Wow.
So she ate my AirPods, and I was obviously angry. I'm like, these are like over $200.
You can recover them after. If they're still in the case, easy. No, they're still good.
It was so bad, and so I just remember thinking like, Ryan comes to the room. He's like, I can give you my AirPods. And I was just like, baby, like not right now. Like whatever you're going to do and say right now, it's not, just give me space to be like angry. So he leaves, right? And then my sister comes and she's like, hey, Lucy, blah, blah. I was like, Erica, I'm not in the space to talk because I like my freaking dog just ate my AirPods. And then I'm like so angry, right? And she's like, if I talk to you, I'm going to talk so much shit and I'm going to spill it all on you. And I do not, it's like, I don't want to deal with the repercussions later.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I get it. And so she leaves, right?
Yeah.
And then, but like being like, from what I hear is like, you're being responsible about like who you like how you resolve your things.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's the same. So it's like and then also what I hear that worked for you is like having that therapist.
Totally. Yeah.
And for some people, it's a family member. For some people, it's their partner. For some people, it could be whatever. But as long as you able to get outside of your head, but actually have somebody that can hold a space for you to feel safe enough to say whatever needs to be said, so you can be a different person after letting all of that out.
Exactly. Yeah. That's really it. Is like once again having that receptacle of like, oh, okay, cool. I can pour this here. This is what this is for. Like for me, I like to keep my attachments clean. And I think some bros are like that. I have bros that are like that. And I've told them, go to fucking BetterHelp and get a therapist, because ultimately, if you want to keep all of your family relationships, romantic relationships, depending on how, in certain people's cases, like maybe their partner, maybe they are the one that holds a space for their partner, and their partner isn't necessarily the one that can hold space for them. It's like, okay, well then, and that's okay. Yeah. There's dynamics in all different types of dynamics in relationships, but ultimately, like we all need a space to empty our cup. Yeah. And if once again, people will be like, oh, that's expensive, I can't afford that. I'm like, even, me being a personal trainer, some people will be like, oh man, this is expensive. Like, I don't know if I can afford it. I'm like, can you afford not to do this? Like, what about the negative repercussions that happen, the negative consequences that happen from us not emptying our cup with therapy? What's the negative repercussions of not, working out as we're getting older in age and we're losing bone density, and, we can't catch ourselves when we trip and we fall and we break a hip and then we get an embolism and die. Like, there's so many things that can happen, right? Yeah. And so it's like ultimately being responsible, like you said, it's like, what is the responsible thing to do so that I can at least negate the potentiality of shit getting fucked up, because shit's probably, stuff's going to come up. Yeah. And ultimately, it's important, once again, to prepare. Like, okay, if sometimes I have calls with my therapist, I'm like, honestly, I'm feeling pretty good. And then we talk about my wins. And that's cool too, because then I'm not like gloating in front of my buddies, right? I'm just, and get a pat on the back. It's like, thank you. Okay, yeah, nice. And sometimes it's heavy. And so, and once again, accountability too, like having that every week, important. So,
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Is there any parting words that you want to tell the Magnanimous Collective community, our listeners?
It's okay to not be okay. It's totally okay to not be okay. You don't have to be strong all the time. And you don't have to show up a certain way to the world besides just being you. I feel like we're so busy putting on our mask that when it's a lot of the times, some people don't even know they have it on, and they've been having it on for so long.
So true.
And it's okay to show emotion. It's okay to have feelings, because us as humans, we're supposed to have feelings. But the best way to actually also feel, like to be able to feel, is by dealing with everything that we've been wanting to numb ourselves with, because you can't have one without the other. Yeah. Yeah. So, and if any of the people that are watching this, if you feel like anything that we talked about resonated, and seek for help. And it's okay to have the feelings that you have, especially because everybody goes through some shit in their life.
So true.
And so I feel like if you love yourself enough to seek for help outside of yourself, in whatever story you have about seeking for help, get that out of your space. Get that out of your head, because it's not real. And it's there to keep you safe, but it's okay to let go and then be like, no, I love myself enough to get help and to be okay with not being okay and feeling my feelings.
I love it. Thank you for that. How can people find you?
Yes. So on Instagram, I'm under Lucy, and then it's 3 underscores. Lucy with 3 Y's at the end. That's like really long.
Which will be in the description if you're watching. If you're watching on the Insta or the YouTube, it'll be there. It'll be in the description. That's so funny. 3 underscores, 3 spaces. Yeah. Well, Lucy, Lucero, Semperio.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Wow, you actually learned that way faster than most people.
I'm seeing it. I had to write it down. See it in my head. But I just want to say, for one, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for saying yes and choosing to be like the first, woman, female on the platform.
Yeah.
And like,
an honor.
What an honor for me and all the viewers. And something I just want to point out, which is funny, because you had said like, sometimes I find myself as not interesting and stuff like that. And I remember when I first reached out to you, I like felt called by Spirit. I was like, I need to ask her. And you say, well, what are we going to talk about? And then you literally lay the most like breathtaking story right in the beginning. It was like, oh, what the heck? So just wanted to give that reflection like, wow. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's been an honor here. Super excited for people to be able to hear your story. And wow. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sean. And it was an honor to be here too. And if by the way, I was like, I told you this, but I was really nervous because I just really I wanted to hold the space for people to actually see what's out there. And then because you're right, I'm the first woman and I'm just like, I want to make sure like it's perfect and I don't want to look bad. And there was like all these things, but I'm so happy that I decided to be with all those feelings. And then it went through this conversation and it was an amazing conversation. Yeah. Totally life-changing, by the way, for me. So thank you. Let's just take a deep breath into that before we close it. Nice. Well, this has been the Magnanimous Collective with Lucy, Lucero, Semperio. Until next time, guys. Thanks so much. Thank you. Wowzers.